Hi, welcome back to the Biblical Bite. I'm your host, Valerie Galetta. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to be talking about bitterness, and we're going to be talking about despair, complicated grief, and sometimes how that can lead to clinical depression. Looking at the book of Ruth, we're going to look at the story more so about Naomi. Naomi means delight or joy or hope, and she's the mother-in-law of Ruth. And so we're going to be pulling up to Ruth chapter 1, verses 20 and 21. And so this is Naomi speaking. So Naomi says, "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." Okay, so clearly she's saying, I feel despair. I'm not in a good place. She's kind of taken on this bitterness as her identity. She wants everyone to know she's not in a good place. So what happens to her? So why is she like this? I want to give some context to this. They were fleeing from their town many years ago. Her and her husband and her two sons, they fled to the town of Moab. Moab was a completely different culture than the Jews. They were not monotheistic. They were polytheistic. They were pagans who worshiped many gods, many deities, and were very antithetical to the Jewish faith. And regardless, they had food, and I guess they were in a better position. So they immersed themselves in that culture to the point where their sons married Orpah and Ruth, who were two Moabites. And we know this because this is all in the first chapter. And so what happens is first Naomi loses her husband, and then about 10 years later or so, she loses her sons. It doesn't really get into the details of it, but it does talk about how she's telling her daughter-in-laws, like, "What? Don't stay with me. You should go back to your town, your home country. I'm going to go to Bethlehem to be with my family, but I can't give you any more sons, and so there's nothing that you can do for me." And so Orpah listens to her mother-in-law, and she does go back to her gods and worships and does what she needs to do. However, Ruth says, "No, I will go where you go. Your God will be my God." So she's saying she's believing in God. She's believing in the God of Israel. And she says, "Yes, I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to be loyal, and I'm going to be your daughter-in-law. Even though you don't have a son for me, I'm not going to abandon you." And so even with this context, Naomi's leaving Moab, and she's going to Bethlehem, and she's feeling bitter, and she's telling everybody, "I'm not feeling well." So she's feeling despair. So I want to talk about this. So grief is very misunderstood. In the clinical world, there's this term called DABDA, DABDA. DABDA, it's not a cycle. It doesn't just go like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, 4, 5. No, I want you to think of it more of like a pinball. Okay, so there's 5 stages of DABDA. So the denial stage, anger stage, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So for denial, a lot of people would say, "Oh, I can't even believe that so-and-so is not here. I don't, they're kind of just in shock, or they're just not aware, or they're like doing things, overcommitting themselves to kind of avoid the pain of processing it." It's important to allow yourself to slow down and grieve. Everyone grieves differently. Some people grieve longer than others. And so it's important that you are giving yourself time to feel. If you need to take time off of work, if you need to ask friends for food, some meals, if you need space, whatever you need, it's important that you let people know what you need, because a lot of people don't know what to say or how to help you. So anger could happen. In anger at yourself, like I wasn't there enough. If only, maybe they're angry at the person for passing away. Maybe there was like an overdose or something traumatic happened. Maybe there was somebody who caused that person's death. There's also bargaining. So bargaining would be like, if only I did this wouldn't have happened. If only I prayed more. If only I believed more. Or maybe bargaining with God, like, "God, if you'll do this, I promise I'll never touch this thing again." Or, "God, if you do this, I promise I'll be the best Christian ever." That's called bargaining. And then there's depression, loss of energy, fatigue, sometimes maybe not showering, losing track of days, lack of motivation, not enjoying things that we once enjoyed. And then there's acceptance, right? So again, this can happen as a pinball. It can happen at any stages. And so it's important that you understand that it can come in waves. So while you may accept it, you can also kind of hit a wall of depression. So there's a statistic, it's about 10 to 15% of people who experience grief have complicated grief, and that can trigger major depressive disorder. And so some symptoms of like major depressive disorder that can happen to you, there could be like thoughts of self-harm, or not wanting to be here anymore. There could, again, like what we kind of just talked about, but for like an extended period of time, not showering, not taking care of yourself, your ADLs, not your daily functioning is being impaired. So it's important that you are aware of this. It's not that you can't grieve, but if it's starting to impact your daily functioning for a long period of time, you should seek professional help, because that is, something you want to make sure that you're okay as well. So I want to get back into the story of Naomi. So Naomi's saying like, this thing happened and I'm bitter. So she lost her husband and then she lost her 2 sons. And so she's just very sad. Little does she know, though, that the story is very redemptive. So, Ruth marries Boaz. They have Obed, and then Obed has Jesse, and then Jesse has King David. So, and then we do know that, King David, the lineage, Jesus, the Messiah, is born through that lineage as well. And so it's pretty amazing to show. So Naomi is saying, I can't, I'm struggling right now. We had a famine. We left to go to a different land. We my husband died, my kids died. What was the point of leaving? I left full and then I'm coming back empty. So she's going back to Bethlehem empty, but God's saying like, I got you. Like, you don't even know, like, I'm going to redeem this. And so no matter your situation, even if you are experiencing some type of loss, it's important that you understand, like, God loves you and he has a plan for you. And so I want to look at Lamentations. That's a book in the Old Testament as well. I'm thinking lamenting, right? We're kind of talking about suffering, and just kind of bringing it to the Lord. We don't know who the author of Lamentations are. A lot of people think it could be the prophet Jeremiah because of all the context behind it. But regardless, I just want to focus on chapter 3, verses 22 through 23. So, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The writer is saying God's love is great. We are not going to be consumed, even though we may feel like we're going to be consumed, that we feel like we can't survive this. God's compassions, they never fail, right? And then it says his compassions are new every single morning. And God is faithful. Every morning we wake up, the sun is up, the clouds are up. Every night we go to bed, the moon is up. God always has everything for you. It's just a matter of being able to see it. And so if we want to clinically, in order to kind of start addressing the despair and that grief, it's important that you process it, and you also start trying to be mindful and choose to have a heart of gratitude, trying to see the blessings that you have. Even if, you're so depressed, you're just like, I'm at rock bottom. Maybe it's not that you lost your loved one or your pet. Maybe there's some grief of like loss of a job, loss of a relationship. Grief can happen in many ways. Grief is a loss of something. And so we just like naturally loss of a human life, but that's not always the case. And so when we're talking about God's mercies are new every morning, it's important that you take one day at a time. And so if you're struggling, if today was a bad day, tomorrow is going to be a new day. And if you are really struggling, if you feel like you're maybe that 10 to 15%, or you were ever that 10 to 15% that had that complicated grief that was really prolonged, and you were really struggling for like years, and maybe you lost your job, or you're on the verge of losing your job, or you were just too depressed to function in your relationships. Maybe there's too much anger or denial, or whatever the case is. It's so important that you feel safe to talk to a friend, maybe your pastor. You don't have to do this alone. Even though you may want to feel alone in this, you're not alone. And so it's important that you don't isolate, and and, allow your anger to kind of push you away from others. And so I just want to give you encouragement for that. And so this is not, regardless how Naomi felt, that was not her end. So eventually she does see Ruth marry Boaz. She does see her name, the family name, get lifted back up. And while she's still grieving, she's starting to see like the mercies of the Lord. She doesn't know, obviously, that Ruth, now her lineage, right, for Naomi is going to be tied to King David and then Jesus. But she does know enough. She knows enough that God was able to faithfully provide for her. And so I just want to encourage you, no matter what situation you're in, or if you know somebody that lost a loved one, just check in with them, see how you can help them. Sometimes it's not about what you say, but just being there for them, whether that's through flowers or a cooked meal, a card, and just pray for them. And if it is you, if you do need something, it's okay to ask. It doesn't make you weak. Usually people want to help, they just don't know how to help. So again, just going to communicating, and that is important. I also want to encourage you. I'm going to link some homework in the bio, in the caption, if you want to do that as well. And there are also books that you can read. You can listen to worship music if you're too depressed to listen to read books. You can start listening to worship music, or just try to spend time with the Lord, even if it's, we talked about this in the first video, like 5 minutes a day, even maybe bumping that up a little bit, whatever you can. Some people are so depressed that they can't even see straight, that they're so overwhelmed. You may also have to at some point go to a physician to get maybe blood work to make sure everything's okay. Sometimes grief can trigger like really bad vertigo. It can trigger really bad hormonal fluctuations. So it's important that your hormones are okay, your biology, everything is kind of taken care of, and you can rule that out. I know the last thing you probably want to do is get blood work, but it's important if you're experiencing like very increased exacerbated symptoms that you do just get it checked out just to be safe. So I hope that this message was helpful. Next session or next meeting, we're going to be talking about loss in a different way. So while Naomi was bitter about her grief, we're going to be talking about King David and how he got over the loss of his son. His loss was a little bit different. So I hope that it was helpful, and I hope you guys have a blessed day. Thanks for watching.